The large Hemet Valley in California is nestled under the majestic Mount San Jacinto. The hills on the other three sides are eroded and scarred by deep ravines. There is, however, a formation that seems conspicuously different, if one only stops to take a closer look, a perfectly formed round hill. But not many do so. Hundreds live in its shadow, and thousands pass by it every day without even noticing it. It doesn't require much scrutiny to see that this unassuming hill, rising 478 feet above the valley floor, is unique. Just look at the other hills. They resemble piles of rocks haphazardly dumped out of some gigantic bucket. This hill, on the other hand, is perfectly round and smooth. What could account for the difference? Geophysicists who examined it with ground-penetrating radar determined with absolute certainty that it contains only loose dirt and sand, but no rocks or boulders. They also excluded natural forces, such as alluvial or glacial deposits, as its source. Nature by itself, they stated, could not have formed a dome-shaped hill of this size. If not forces of nature, what else could have erected it? There are round hills in many countries around the world, but those are all man-made. They were erected thousands of years ago over the graves of important persons. Building these burial mounds required hundreds, sometimes thousands, of people and years of dedicated labor. Basket loads of earth had to be carried one by laborers, who could not have been employed in other activities such as food production. Therefore, only rich civilizations could afford to build them. Some regions abound in them, while others have none. There are over 40,000 preserved burial mounds on the Great Hungarian Plain, more than 20,000 in Denmark, and 161,000 in Japan. Hundreds of man-made mounds in the United States, mostly in the eastern part of the Mississippi Valley, were built by well-organized Paleo-Indian civilizations. But no such creations were ever located in the American West, and none were ever found on the West Coast. If the round hill in Hemet is a man-made burial mound, who could have built it, and why? Specialists from the Army Corps of Engineers estimate that constructing the Hemet mound without modern mechanized technology would require 2.7 million workdays, or 2,700 laborers working on it for 10 years. To marshal such a workforce and undertake a gigantic project of that magnitude would require an advanced, well-organized social and political structure, and no such society is known to have existed in California prior to the 20th century. The Hemet Valley has been inhabited for hundreds of years. First by members of the Cahuilla Indian tribe, who lived there in tiny, isolated communities. They erected primitive shelters made from sticks and grass. Barely surviving in this semi-arid region, they can easily be ruled out as potential mound builders. In the 19th century, the Astudillo family received the valley as a land grant and raised horses on it. No improvements, other than the bunkhouse for vaqueros, were made during their ownership. After California became a part of the United States in 1850, white settlers moved to the valley. They built farms, stores, golf courses, and hotels. And all along, the Dome Hill stood there, unnoticed. The only records pertaining to the history of the Dome Hill can be found in the local library, in a dossier labeled BL 34-97/1950. It contains handwritten notes and a number of black and white photographs. The notes describe a small group of men who, during the Great Depression in the 1930s, leased the piece of land where the hill stands from a local farmer who had fallen on hard times and started to excavate it. There was nothing unusual about this. Hills around Hemet show signs of digging to this day. Small operators were extracting gold and diamonds in this area until the 1950s. The enthusiasts who dug into the Dome Hill must have had some inkling of what they were searching for. First, they dug a horizontal tunnel that started at the base and continued all the way through the hill, ending on the other side. Then they built a road spiraling up the slope of the hill to its top, which is still visible today. From there, they sank a vertical shaft through the hill's center. How deep it went is now impossible to tell, as its sides caved in a long time ago. Some of the photographs in the dossier in the library give us a clue about what the men were looking for. They are copies of a manuscript written in the 17th century by Padre Ignacio del Cerro, a Spanish Jesuit monk living in Mexico. It recounts the story of a massive colonization attempt undertaken after the last Aztec ruler, Cuauhtémoc, was executed by Cortés in 1525. His grandson, Guadoani, accompanied by a multitude of his subjects, set out to find a suitable place in the north, where he planned to establish a new Aztec kingdom far from the hated Spaniards. After a long and arduous trek through inhospitable lands, the procession reached the most beautiful valley, according to Padre Ignacio. It seemed a promising site for a new kingdom. Unfortunately, Guadoani died soon afterward. He was buried there, and a mountain was moved to cover his grave, full of gold and precious things, as Padre Ignacio noted. Mexico's folklore abounds with legends of lost gold mines and hidden treasures. It seems the group of men who tunneled into the hill in Hemet must have thought the story of the buried gold credible. The dossier in the library is silent on the results of their undertaking. Perhaps the men found what they were looking for and quietly departed. Or they may have had enough of back-breaking labor and given up. If so, and if the legend is true, there still might be a treasure waiting to be discovered underneath the mound in Hemet, the valley most beautiful,